Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Mama Minutes. I am Anne. I am so excited to welcome you here to the Centered Mama Project's home to talk to an exquisite woman and someone who I'm very, very fortunate to call a dear friend, Karen Quinn. Karen is a perfumer and a clinical aromatherapist, and I'm looking to make sure I don't read this wrong, with a particular interest in the healing power of fragrance and vibrational energy, the vibrational energies of plant essences. She's also a whole bunch of other things besides, and mama to Michael, who's 22, and Matthew, who's 21. And just at the minute, she's adjusting to the empty nest feeling that is relatively new in her life. So Karen, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks, Anne. It's my pleasure.
So let's dive right in. Unlike, you're in a different phase of motherhood than some of the other moms that we've had on, and that's so valuable for all of us. So can you sum up for us in one word or a few sentences, what is your current experience of momming right now?
I would say challenging. It's really hard to let go. It's funny because I remember like it was yesterday, trying, like thinking I just can't wait for them to grow up and go away. And now it's like, oh my God, I wish they were babies again.
Oh,
yeah, challenging. It's just an adjustment. There are days when I wake up and it's lovely. I'll go to the fridge and there'll still be food in it, and so. But then there's other days where I'll open the fridge and I'll think, oh, I didn't really want that to still be there.
oh,
yeah. So it's just an adjustment. So yeah, it's good. It's like I'm coming to terms with having the freedom to be who I am and always was again, instead of just being mum. So that's nice.
That's so huge. And I think really important for those of us who are earlier in the journey to hear that, that time, I mean, even though the interrupted nights and the seemingly endless stream of viruses and, mommy, it just is constant. And when you're in the middle of it, it can feel amazing. And also sometimes like a little bit suffocating for those who are listening and maybe not watching me clawing at my own neck. But yeah, that there comes a time when, like all of us, our kids grow up and then you have all of this space. And what do you do with that? What do you do with all of that?
Yeah.
Ability to yourself.
Yeah.
So I would love to go, maybe it's far back, maybe it's not far back, to find out what is the most valuable thing that anyone has ever done for you since you started your journey as a mama.
That would be my husband, and he used to take the boys out on a Saturday morning really early, normally just to a McDonald's play place where he would read the papers until the children had had enough of playing, and I would just be allowed to lie in. He always used to say to me, stay in bed if you want to. I'm not doing this so that you can have time to do chores. This is time for you. And that meant so much to me. It was the biggest thing he could possibly do to prove that he loved me.
Oh, that sounds amazing and so necessary. All of us should take note, actually, of that. It's a great idea. I will just say that my hyenas and husband have just walked in the door and I can hear them, and there's going to be some background noise. So this is real mama life, right?
Yeah.
Come in. They're supposed to know I'm on this call with you, but we'll see how they can remember that if they do. Can you tell me about a time in your mama's journey when you wish you'd spoken out and asked for support?
Yeah. For me, it was when I had postnatal depression. I had both my boys very close together. So I still hadn't got over it with my first child, who was premature. He was born 2 months premature, and it took me a long time to bond with him because of that. And really the bonding process only started when I found out I was pregnant with the second one 6 months later. So by the time the second one came along, I'd had a difficult pregnancy, and I was really not in a very good place, and I knew I needed help. And my health visitor knew I needed help too. And she used to visit me weekly. But she gave me this test called, I think it's the Glasgow test. And you have to fill in this questionnaire, and it asks you things like, have you ever wanted to harm your baby? Have you ever wanted to harm yourself? And both of those things were true, but I was not about to put that in writing. I was on my own. We'd moved to a completely different area. I was hundreds of miles from my family. I hadn't really made any new friends. And the health visitor sent me to this support group for women with new babies. But everyone was miserable, and I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to be part of this miserable group of women. So not only did I not get help for the postnatal depression because I lied on the form, so I didn't show up as having it, but I also wouldn't go to the support group with women because, you know, I wanted to be happy, and I knew I wasn't, but I couldn't bring myself out of it because it's a chemical thing. So it took me a lot longer to recover from than it should have. And I feel like I missed some of the real joy of having a young baby. I mean, I loved my children, and I did give them cuddles, and I breastfed the younger one for longer. But yeah, that was probably my most difficult time as a parent, when I should have had more support than I did. So
you have said to me before, and I think you won't mind me raising this when we're talking about this. You've said to me before that in that time when you were filling out that questionnaire, you were utterly terrified that they would take your kids away from you.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest reason why you had sort of outwitted the questionnaire, if we can put it that way, yeah. or falsified your answers on the questionnaire because you were so terrified that they would take your children away.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's a really, really scary thing to have happen, isn't it? I mean, to even just be thinking that. Yeah. And yet, if you could go back to postnatal Karen, mm-hmm. and offer that you some support or some advice, what would that be?
I think any mum would not want to put in writing effectively by checking this list that she had once thought of harming her children. So I think my advice to myself would be, okay, I can fully understand why you wouldn't want to put that on the tick list, but I should have spoken to my health visitor about it and told her that was what I was worried about. Because she would have understood. But of course, it's part of that chemical imbalance that paranoia sets in, and you have this mask on for the world. That just means it takes you that much longer to heal, because nobody realizes you need support if you're pretending all the time, and it's exhausting.
So how did you heal?
In the end, I went to the doctors about 2 years after I'd had Matthew, my younger one, and I said I was depressed, and could I have some help? And the doctors, being what they were, didn't put it together with postnatal depression, so they just gave me some tablets and said I'd probably need to take them for a couple of months before I felt the difference. But one day, after about 3 weeks, I woke up and I realised I felt normal, and that was all I needed. So I just stopped taking them instantly. All I needed was to remember what it felt like to feel normal, because I just felt miserable every day. And one day I just woke up and I didn't. I just, I thought, oh, the sun's shining. And that was my first thought. It was incredible. And that was it. I was fine from then on. Because I just needed to be reminded of, just that. I just needed to be reminded what normal was, because I just thought I had a new normal because I was a mum now. So that was it. It's not. there isn't a new normal. It's normal is normal. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, for anyone who might be watching or listening, it's such an individual experience in a way, because we're all so different. And yet it's such a common feeling. And I also suffered terribly from undiagnosed postnatal depression, undiagnosed by me, my husband, anyone. You know, he will say that he talked about it at some stage to a doctor, but I don't remember those conversations ever happening around me or involving me, and certainly nothing was done. For, you know, for a variety of reasons, not least of which was probably that I was in a place where I didn't really speak the language that well, and that made it really hard to have any therapy or do anything like that, or have any kind of in-depth discussion without going through the intermediary of my husband. But for anyone who's watching or listening, I think it's really important that if you are able to go and get that help, that that both starting to take any kind of antidepressant and stopping taking antidepressants is something that obviously needs to be done with medical supervision, and you know, being able to stop them straight away and being okay I think is pretty unusual relative to you know, different levels of serotonin and other compounds that are in the brain.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I understand what you mean about just plugging back into normal, right? Remembering in a visceral way what normal felt like. I mean, like, oh yeah, right, this is this. I can do this again.
Yeah, and I think it was partly because it happened so quickly. But I did go and tell my doctor. You know, I just said to her, all I needed was to remember what normal was, and I'm fine now.
Yeah,
Which is amazing. Said, yeah, you haven't been on them that long, it's not a problem. So
yeah, that's amazing.
I did get it sort of verified, because it was a huge step for me to go for chemical intervention, if you like.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it is for. I would hope that there's less of a stigma around it now, because it's an illness just like any other illness. But I think we still hesitate, or many people will still hesitate. Whereas what's most important is your overall health, mental, physical, and otherwise. And I think certainly that's something that's in the UK at least being talked about a lot right now. At time of recording with Prince Harry and Prince William and Catherine talking a lot about mental health and how the death of Lady Diana had affected them. It's a really important topic of conversation, and I appreciate your courage in raising it and us being able to talk about it today. But let's come back to both your current mama life and your mama life throughout the journey, because your kids are in their early 20s, so obviously it's another phase of life. But how do you find ways, even today, you know, you say it's challenging to let them go. How do you find ways to work self-love into your real life? Work self-care, work time for you, whatever self-love looks and feels like to you. How do you work that in now? And were you able to work it in when they were younger as well?
Yeah. When they were younger, one of the issues I had, like so many women, is that my husband was working really long hours. So I was a full-time stay-at-home mum, and I didn't really get to know anyone until we were at the school gates, because I refused to go to these support groups. And it was quite a difficult time for me. So one of the best ways I found to bring self-love into parenting was to really throw myself into playing with the children. So I would be fully present, like I was a child too. Joy has always been a really important emotion for me. So to fully feel the joy of playing with my children and not treat it like something I had to do to keep them entertained, really made a huge difference to me. Actually fitting self-love and self-care in wasn't something I was so good at. You know, the kids want to get in the bath with you when they're smaller and all the rest of it. And I did often feel like I was a single parent. So those Saturday mornings when my husband took the children, for me, were always lovely. So I would stay in bed an extra hour. But then I'd get up and I'd get in the bath for an hour. Bath is always a real pleasure for me. And to have that full time when I know no one's going to knock on the door and ask me what I'm doing or anything like that was just super important. So yeah, it's just, you know, very occasionally I'd say to my husband, can you do this at this time because I want to do something. When they start, I used to take them to nursery one morning a week, just to get them socialised, really, because I was acutely aware that we were an isolated unit. So to help them make the transition into going to school, I put them into nursery one morning a week, and every other week I would go and have a facial.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was a period of intense joy in my life. Yeah, that was really nice for me. So yeah, it's just finding ways to build it into your life, but for me it was like balancing. So they weren't being put into nursery so I could go for a facial. They were being put there for their benefit, and then I made the most of it too. So yeah, that was always important for me.
That's that and me thing that I talk about often, right? Like, it's not just for them. There's I can get some goodness out of this too, and what is it? One of the things that I would love to talk about is, as a perfumer and an aromatologist, right? Yeah. Right. Yeah. I always get that wrong. One of the things that I've learned a lot about from you is the power of aromatherapy and how that can help support us in our self-love and in our self-care in ways, again, that don't feel like we're taking away from. We're not pushing our kids aside or pushing our partner aside or our family aside to take care of ourselves, which has its place in time. I'm not saying that those are bad things to do. I think it's really important sometimes to be like, oh, this is time for me, and you're going to be over here doing whatever. And actually, I'm good with taking some time for me. But I have actually literally right in front of me a little gift from Karen that says, and relaxing, because this is a blend that you mixed up for me when I was in a pretty intense time. And this aromatherapy has really supported me. So can you talk a little bit about how that aromatherapy piece has supported you throughout your journey? Because it's something that you didn't maybe have access to through your whole mothering journey, but you certainly have in more than the last decade. So
yeah, it's been amazing for me, actually. When I had a career break, so when the children were very young, I didn't work at all. Apart from being a mum, which is the hardest work I've ever done, but I didn't go out of the house to work. So when they were going back to school, I decided that I was going to retrain as a nurse, which had been my childhood ambition, because I'd had a career break anyway, so I could effectively afford not, to be not earning. So I went and studied nursing. And I loved it all the way through that nurse training journey until I got to the end, where I was in a very difficult ward. I'm not going to bore everyone with the details, but by the time I was finished in that ward, I was also finished with nursing. I completely emotionally burnt myself out. And I remembered something that I'd forgotten from childhood, really, was that I'm a natural empath and healer. I've always been very spiritual. So all of this came back to me in that final ward placement, because it was my natural empathy that actually was my undoing, because I was so connected with the parents and children I was working with that it was emotionally overwhelming. So I knew I still really needed and wanted to care for people, so that's how I got into aromatherapy. I went looking for holistic therapies where I could still help people, but in a way that suited me, so more on a one-to-one basis. And I absolutely fell in love with aromatherapy from the very first time I sniffed my first drop of essential oil. It was like my soul had come home. And I've been completely involved with it ever since. I've tried lots of different things, because as soon as I became a holistic therapist, for me it felt like the right place to be was to be self-employed. But I had no experience of that world. There were no entrepreneurs in my family background. and I didn't know how to run my own business. So I tried lots and lots of different things, but I was always kept going by my love for essential oils. And now it's developed. I've become an aromatologist, so I know about not just what oil does what jobs because of what it is, but what's in it that makes it do that. So I have a more in-depth understanding. And when I added perfumery to my list of skills, which I only did for, I was looking for a particular module of chemistry to help with my aromatherapy, but I uncovered a natural talent, and it made so much sense. So my aromatherapy journey has just been amazing. It's like the oils have taken me where I need to go. My love of them and what they can do for me, and using them to keep me calm when I was getting stressed, or to lift me up when I was, oh gosh, this is too hard, I don't know what to do. That keeping me, the oils have kept me balanced and kept me going. And it's just been the most incredible journey. I just absolutely love my work. And right now I'm just about to bring out a range of oils that are going to be sold in the retail marketplace. And I like knowing that I'm going to be making a difference in many people's lives with oils similar to the one I've made for you. Blends made with love and care, and with the vibrational effect of the oils in place is just it's my new baby, really. It's taking from the boys. Yeah,
so it's sort of a new phase in your mothering journey. And I think what is really amazing, certainly as someone who is walking the path with you, has been that I've seen firsthand with Amelia, who is our youngest, for anyone who hasn't heard me mention her name before. She gets really anxious and has a bunch of stuff that she needs to do regularly that really, really causes a massive amount of stress. And Karen, Amelia was the first one to try one of Karen's very exciting new things that she's coming out with, that I'm sure I'll tell you about when it happens, when they finally are launching. And it has really made a difference to her. And I think, you know, as much as the point of these conversations is to center around motherhood and our journeys as mothers and our experience as mothers, and also for all of us as we're listening to have moments of like, oh, I get it, or oh, that's me, or that's happening to me, or, you know, the aha moments, the moments of identification. And the point is not to promote in any way, but what Karen's skills, what your skills have brought into our family, the support that has created, both on the one hand for Amelia, who really gets super anxious, and for our oldest Nina, who struggles with confidence as a result of her dyslexia. Those blends that have been made specifically for those situations have supported us in ways that are natural and safe and just filled with love, because they come from you. And I think it's another way of working self-love and self-care into our real lives in a way that doesn't cost the earth, that isn't complicated, doesn't require planning, doesn't take extra energy, but it gives back into us. And I really value that. I value that, and I'm really grateful.
Oh, thank you.
For that.
Yeah, sorry, I felt like I went a bit off track then when I was giving that answer. Yeah, because the reason I was talking about those oils is because they have supported my parental journey. They've enabled me to be me and be something outside the family.
Yeah.
But now that my sort of mothering young children journey is out of the way, now my business has become that, and that's going to enable me to spread love and happiness, hopefully, to a much wider audience. So I'll still be mothering in a way, which is
yeah and it's, I think that's a really important piece for us as mothers, that we in some cases, some of us connect with this nurturing and this mothering ability when we become mothers. Others are like that since day dot, and we always have this capacity to nurture, and we're forever looking after our friends and all the rest, whether we have kids or not. And then when we become mothers, we're engulfed in this need and want to, this desire to really, really provide and nurture. And oh, I have goosebumps saying that. When I said engulfed, all the little goosebumps came up. That you know, we have this massive desire and wish to nurture, but that it doesn't stop. And you have found a way of channeling that into something that is going to serve, I think, millions, being one who uses your blends, but time will tell. And it's really amazing and important, because we exist before we are mothers, we exist while we're mothers, and we exist after we're mothers. I mean, not after we're mothers, after our kids, after we're through with the young child and teenage and young adult years, we're always here, right? We're the one constant through all the shifting phases. And I think that's really important. Okay, to wrap it up, because I know you've got lots on your plate today. What is the funniest thing that's happened in your life this week?
Right. Yeah, I had to think about this a little bit. And then I remembered I had a message from Matthew. Matthew is 21 and he's just gone to Australia. He's gone off traveling for at least 6 months. And before he was going, he was talking about traveling off with, they've only gone with a one-way flight ticket. So they're thinking that they're going to travel back via Asia. Which quite freaks me out, to be honest. I'd much sooner he got on a plane and came home safely. I don't like the idea of him being out of touch for days and weeks where there's no Wi-Fi and stuff like that. So anyway, he's gone off to Australia with 3 friends, and Matthew is a party boy. You know, he before he left, he had a job working as a chef in a pizza restaurant, which he loved because pizza's his favourite thing in the whole world. And but he knew that it was just a means to an end. He was just saving money to be able to go to Australia. So he's gone over there with his camera because his long-term ambition is to be a photographer. And but he lives to party, and he he sent me a message and said, I don't know if this is working. Like, he's in Sydney, so he's just spent New Year's Eve in Sydney. He's only been there a week, and he said, these boys think they're on holiday. This is not travelling to me. You have to know Matthew to understand how hilarious that is, because this boy has always wanted to have fun. From day one, he's been the funniest, wildest child. I was on first name terms with his headmaster in primary school. It was less than 3 months before I was on first name terms with his head of year in high school. And he just, he is a really clever boy, but he basically was in the sorts of remedial class for most subjects because he didn't want anyone to know he was clever, so he didn't have to work hard. And he's sending me a message saying, these people don't take travelling the way, they don't think about travelling the way I do. And he's only been there a week. I just think that's the most hilarious thing.
Oh, it'll be interesting to see how he gets on and how he negotiates it, won't it?
Yeah, it'll be really interesting.
It's a big learning curve when you set off on your own and you've got your idea of how things will be. And it's kind of like motherhood in a way, isn't it? It's a journey, and you come into motherhood with ideas about the kind of mother you're going to be and the kind of relationships you're going to have with your kids and how your kids are going to be and what your family is going to look like. And it kind of goes on and on and on and on. And then there's all of the variables, which is your partner, if there is one, your kids and who they are, your situation, the politics, economy, geography. I mean, all of the things that you can't control. And then there's fantasy, and then there's reality. And how do you make those two meet? It sounds like that's kind of where he is right now, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, he's hilarious. And I should just say, I don't want to do him a disservice. He was in the sort of remedial class at school for maths, English and science at one stage. But then he suddenly realised if he didn't buck his ideas up, he wouldn't get into college or university. And like within a year, he turned it all around. So the intent really is there. I'm not
that intrinsic motivation really, really works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Karen, I can feel your love oozing for your big grown men, formerly babies, and I can also feel all of the love oozing for your amazing new baby who's finally coming out into the world. With the, can I name them? Can I say what they're called?
Yes.
With the pocket potions.
Yeah.
Pocket potions are going to be so cool, that we can all enjoy and benefit from when those finally are available. But yeah, I'm just really grateful that you took the time today, because I know you're in full planning and launch prep mode for those pocket potions. And I'm super grateful to have had this conversation with you and to be able to share some of your experiences and the learnings that you've had along the way with mamas who are listening. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Anne. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.